there's this line of thinking in Jewish thinking and in Christian thinking that associates the serpent in the garden with malevolence itself. So that's the weird association between the snake and Satan, which is not in that original story. It's part of the after story in some sense. And I puzzled over that for a tremendous long, it's like, what's going on there? Why is that association exists? Well, the worst snake is not a snake. The worst snake is like a meta snake. It's like the essence of snake. And then that becomes something psychological. And the good mother doesn't just protect you from snakes. It protects you from the snake in your heart. And that's a real snake, man. And if you're going to protect your kids, one more thing. If you're going to protect your kids from the snake in their hearts, and in your heart too, you better bloody well have your head in the stars.
That's a nice analogy. I'll give you that. That's one of the ones that I can sort of buy,
well, that's what those artists were trying to puzzle out, eh?
I guess so, but at the same time...
Mircea Eliade, he's a great historian of religions. And he was cognizant of Nietzsche's proclamation that God had died. And Eliade knew what that meant and what the consequences would be. But he went back when he was doing his pioneering work into the history of religion. He said, this has happened many times. This is not the first time. Why? Well, what happens is a community comes together and forms some representation of the summum bonum, right? The thing that should be on top, the ultimate good. Yeah. But gets so damn abstract that it doesn't connect to life. It's like, well, that's God, but what does it have to do with me, like interacting with my wife or doing something embodied and practical? It gets so abstract, it floats away. No one has any relationship to it anymore, and it dies. But that's not good for a variety of reasons, which we can get into. Well, part of the way that the Christian imagination addressed that problem, speaking psychologically, is to take that abstraction and make it incarnate in a particular time and place. And it pulls the story down to earth. And it makes it much more compelling. A student once asked me, look, if there's all these archetypal structures, why don't we just tell the archetype over and over? And I thought, oh, it has to be particularized. It has to be optimally particularized for imitation. That's why. And so if I get too abstract, you don't know what it means for perception or action, and it loses all significance and you drift away. A good storyteller, he knows his audience, and he can put the story on the edge of their cognitive transformation. And then it's absolutely captivating. But it means the archetype has to be particularized constantly and re-particularized constantly.
Well, it's another way. I mean, I guess that's often you frame things in a way that I think is a fancy way of saying something that maybe I'm just too pedestrian. I would just say, that I said before, teaching is seducing. Car salesman is seducing. If you want to get to people, you have to go ask where they're coming from, and you have to tell your arguments to where they're coming from so that they can emotionally relate. Isn't that just the case? Isn't that what you're saying?
Well, I'm trying to explain why those things are seductive.
Okay, so but why? Okay, they are.
Because that's the thing. It's the experiential issue, and that's also relevant with regard to the notion of religious depth, which we should just take a quick side step into.
We're going to go there eventually anyway. So yeah,
because it's a technical issue as far as I'm concerned, because I'm trying to speak psychologically. So when you start to toy with the deepest values upon which all these other values depend, that has an embodied consequence. One is it's deeply upsetting. Mm-hmm. So it's anxiety provoking. The other is it's deeply wonder provoking. And those are both there. And the reason they're both there is because, well, you blow apart that base level map and all sorts of things fly out of Pandora's box. And some of those things might kill you, but some of those things might be just what you need to solve your current problem. So it's tense. When you speak at religious depth, there's an embodied consequence of that. It's independent of any discussion about, religious propositions as logical statements about the structure of reality. For me, most of that's beside the point. It's like, you don't.
But for me, most of it's not only beside the point. Most of it's irrelevant.
Yeah, it's irrelevant to what we're discussing because there are depths.
Most of it's silly.
Yes, and there are depths. And if you get deep enough, you have religious experiences. Now, what that means about this,
what do you mean by
awe is a good one.
Well, okay, so that's the Einstein's God is Spinoza's God. The fact that the universe is comprehensible, awe of the universe.
Yeah, those
you
things.
call that
Those
a
are-
religious experience?
Yeah, I think awe. In fact, I'm defining this in some sense.
No, okay, I want to know.
Right?
No,
I'm defining
okay.
this. Okay,
Good,
so,
okay, so
yeah. So awe. Let's take the emotion of awe. It's a mixture of emotions. It's both positive and negative emotions, and it's predicated on a prey response to a predator. That's the biological underpinning. So, for example, your hair will stand on end. Well, why? Well, it's because that's piloerection. It's what happens when a prey animal sees a predator. It's like poof. Well, that's part of awe. It's like you've something greater than you and potentially dangerous has come into view. That's the embodied part of that. Of course, it's way more.
If I look at the night sky and I'm awed by it,
it's
that's
certainly
something
strange
greater
one,
than me.
Yeah,
it's certainly something greater than me.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it's potentially dangerous because it sort of seems to be out there and separate. I mean, unless you have astrology or some bit of nonsense, but it's awe-inspiring, even though it's completely, at least on the surface, unrelated to me.
Well, it's also a place, though, where you do, in some real sense, confront the infinite unknown.
Oh, yes.
It's right there. The infinite unknown will swallow you.
It swallows me every day.
Well, it'll swallow you when you die. It will do that. You're surrounded by it.
Well, when I die, it won't swallow it. I mean, yeah. What do you mean when you say things like that? I don't know what you mean.
You dissolve into it because it's a horizon.
You just end.
But
you don't dissolve into some mystical,
I understand.
infinite unknown.
I'm not trying to say
New
that.
Age. I know you're not, but then when you say it,
look,
it's natural for people to then jump into this New Age nonsense.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
I want to hold your feet to the fire only because I care.
You should. You absolutely should. Absolutely. Look, here's one thing you experience at a funeral. I've seen this many times. People will stand by the body of the person they loved, and they cannot speak. There's nothing to say. And it's because they're on the horizon. Now, I'm not saying that you dissolve into anything particularly. I'm saying it's a limit experience. And when you look up into the sky, it's an analogy of that experience. You're on the frontier in some sense when you look up into the sky. And you're faced with, in some sense, what you are in relationship to that. And now that's also, okay, now I'm going to go sideways here for a second, tell you a bit of a story. Okay, so
I have no agenda.
I've been looking at this image with my wife and this friend of mine, and it's of Mary, the Mother of God. Okay, it's a very interesting image, and Renaissance painters were all over this. So you can Google Mary, Serpent, stars, and you'll see like these beautiful paintings. Okay, so there's Mary. Her head's in the stars, 12 of them. There's a reason for that. And her foot's on the world and on a serpent. Yeah, that's right. Well, it's the seasons. It's a bunch of things, man.
It's a bunch of things.
It's a bunch of, but it's the cosmos. But so there's that image, and many, many painters spent much time on that image. It's a very weird image. Her head's in the stars, her foot's on the serpent, the earth is down there. What the hell's going on? Well, here's part of it. So when you face something that's deeply unknown, it calls to you in some sense to be more than you are. Now, how is that related to the prey-predator relationship? Well, if you're a prey, you should be a little more than you are in relationship to that predator. And so there's a call to adaptation in the awe response to a predator. It's like, be more or die. And look at us, man. We've done a pretty good job of doing exactly that for like little skinny naked apes. It's like, look the hell out, man. Wolves run away from us. Okay, and so in some sense, we imitated the predator as a consequence of that awe response, and we're good at imitating. And God only knows what we're imitating when we look up at the stars. But this image of Mary is an attempt to puzzle that out. So that serpent that she has her foot on, that's the snake. Well, okay, Mary's a mother. It's like, don't eat my kids, snakes, for 60 million years, right? This is a deep image. But it's deeper than that too, because there's this line of thinking in Jewish thinking and in Christian thinking that associates the serpent in the garden with malevolence itself. So that's the weird association between the snake and Satan, which is not in that original story. It's part of the after story in some sense. And I puzzled over that for a tremendous long. It's like, what's going on there? Why is that association exists? Well, the worst snake is not a snake. The worst snake is like a meta snake. It's like the essence of snake. And then that becomes something psychological. And the good mother doesn't just protect you from snakes. It protects you from the snake in your heart. And that's a real snake, man. And if you're going to protect your kids, one more thing. If you're going to protect your kids from the snake in their hearts, and in your heart too, you better bloody well have your head in the stars.
That's a nice analogy. I'll give you that. That's one of the ones that I can sort of buy,
Well, that's what those artists were trying to puzzle out, eh?
I guess so, but at the same time, I can't. What's so important about why for you is important to puzzle that story about that?